Whodats. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
We have to finish. I think that's one of the most important things. Like with the type of people we have on this team, like we have finishers. But in a game like that, especially at home or really wherever you're at, you have to finish as a unit.
Yeah, you do. Jameis Winston talking about the Saints debacle against the Giants. 17 unanswered points. The Giants overcome an 11-point fourth-quarter deficit to beat the Whodats in their dome coming, 27-21. We're going to break it down, look ahead to the Washington football team, talk Urban Meyer, talk Alvin Kamara, and everything Saints related. I'm Mike Nabors, the host. Let's bring in my partners, Justin Thomas, my producer, and Scott Shanle, Super Bowl winning linebacker. I got to say, Shanle, I thought the Saints would be 2-2, but I thought they'd be a different 2-2. I thought they'd lose to the Packers, beat the Panthers, lose to the Patriots, beat the Giants. It was the exact opposite, which is why I'm 0-4, and we'll have our predictions later. This season's been crazy. It really has.
You know what, Mike, that summarizes how all Saints fans feel. I can promise you that, because I think a lot of people would have felt the same way. I don't know what to believe with this team. I don't know if we can compete for the division, if we should just be getting ready for no playoff plans. But this Green Bay Packers win feels like an eternity ago, when we all thought, well, we picked up right where we left off. We're going to be in the thick of this NFC championship hunt. And since then, there's been a lot of question marks that pop up, and there's a new question mark every single week since then. Listen, for three quarters, the Saints looked the way they should have against the Giants. Maybe not so much offensively, but there are problems popping up in the last quarter and overtime that we haven't seen for about 4 years in this Saints team, and I don't know whether to worry or not. We'll know going forward.
Yeah, it's still early, but I'm with you. There's a lot of concerns with this football team. I think Justin Thomas was onto something, though, because he guilt me into picking the Patriots, because he says, if we all pick the Saints will lose. And he's right. We all picked the Saints against Carolina. They lost. I'm the reason they won that Patriots game. But then we all picked the Saints to beat the Giants. And Justin, there you go. I think we have a pattern here a little bit.
Yeah, so who's going to be the GOAT this week and vote for the Saints to lose?
That's a tease. That's what you call a tease later in the podcast.
I can promise you I'm not taking – well, we'll get to it, but Taylor Heineke, that's all I'm saying.
Shanle just ruined the tease, but we'll make up for it later. You know what? I want to talk about a lot of things, but I think, right now, I still think this team has talent, Shanle. I do. I think there's just – they're banged up to some degree, and I know a lot of teams are banged up, but I think when they get a Michael Thomas back, when they get an Onyemata back, I think there's some pieces here where they're going to improve, but they're just not the team that they were the last 4 years, though. I don't see that kind of team, but I still think they have potential to be a good team. I do.
Yeah, and listen, when you start naming the guys you're naming, David Onyemata, he's one of the most underrated interior defensive linemen in all the NFL. He is going to take care of some problems in the middle of the defense, because the biggest problem the Saints team had last week that suddenly popped up that we haven't seen in 4 years is the Saints defensive line was not good. They got zero pressure on Daniel Jones, weren't winning one-on-one pass rushes. And that's why you saw Daniel Jones threw for 400 yards. And it's not because all of a sudden Marshawn Lattimore can't cover and our DBs aren't good. We had no pressure on the quarterback. It was 7-on-7 practice back there. So my main concern right now is D-line. You bring up David Onyemata, he's going to fix some of those problems. But I agree with you. There's a lot of teams that have a lot of injuries. They have a lot of things going on. But there aren't many teams that had to play a whole game without a coaching staff. There certainly aren't many teams that are missing the top three number one wide receiver in the league. So maybe I've been harshly critical of Jameis so far. Maybe I should wait until he has Michael Thomas, just like Drew did for the past few years.
Absolutely. Jameis had his best game against the Giants. That was the ironic part of the Saints losing. And I really felt sorry for Jameis when he threw that perfect deep ball to Kenny Stills, and there was a penalty that brought it back. Jameis made some great throws, had a lot of completions in a row. I mean, there's a lot of talk out there about Sean Payton not trusting Jameis Winston. And here's what Jameis had to say about that and his role on the Saints offense so far this year.
I have to fit in. When you've had so much success as a head coach, with your offense, with the way that you do things, I'm getting adjusted to that, and I've been loving it. I've been loving how efficient we've been being. I've been loving it, having a lot off my plate, but obviously I want more, but that has to be earned, and week by week, I'm gonna have opportunity to earn it.
When I listen to Jameis Winston, Shanle, he's always been a humble guy, but he has really been humbled. His experience, leaving Tampa Bay, watching for a year. I think he knows this is the right plan for him to kind of ease into it, not rush like he has, but you can tell there's a part of him too that just wants to let it, to fling it too. I mean, it's got to be kind of a balance for him right now.
And yeah, it's Jameis, and it's really for fans too, because I'm torn when Jameis drops back and he's not on schedule, and he starts to kind of go outside of the offense. I get that lump in my stomach and throat, like, oh my gosh, what is he going to do? And I'm sure if I get that, Coach Payton is getting that, Pete Carmichael is getting that, and they're reining him in. And I don't think we can rein Jameis in. I think we're to the point now where, you know what, we probably aren't favored to win the NFC. We're not as good as some of these other teams. And if we're going to beat those teams when the time comes, we have to be aggressive. And I think right now is a better time to see what we can do with Jameis being Jameis than waiting until the playoffs to unleash him when we have to. So just go out there and run an aggressive offense. I think that's the easier way of saying, because I've been rambling on. Our offense has to get back to being aggressive. And you have to trust Jameis. And if Jameis turns the ball over, then you throw Taysom Hill in there. And that's just how it has to be. But this conservative approach on offense is good to win certain games. But I don't think you can do it all year, because it gets more conservative by the week. And you can't do it to win games consistently in the NFL.
Absolutely. And a byproduct of this offense is the role of Alvin Kamara. I'm not a huge numbers guy, but the numbers are so revealing with Kamara when you look at his rushing numbers and his receiving numbers and through the first 4 games of this year compared to the first 4 games of last year. Now, look at this. He's rushed for more yards than a year ago. This is, to me, I'll get to receiving yards in a second because that's really the story. But he's on pace for 331 carries, Shanle. He's never in his career had more than 194. I mean, can he keep this pace up?
He has to. For years we've compared Kamara. We've done it on here. Who's better, Kamara or McCaffrey? And usually when the guys pick McCaffrey, it's because they say, well, the guy led the league for 2 years in a row in touches. He showed he could take on that load. Now, he's been hurt the last couple of years, but we haven't seen Alvin, not to his own fault, we haven't seen him carry that workload. He has to be able to do that this year. He has to be what people would call a bell cow running back. Number one guy. He's not going to have many rotations. And I'm sure he likes it that way. But to your point, on our Cox Sports television show that we do for the pregame show, I've said all year the number one key, and I'm not going to say it every week, but it is Alvin Kamara has to get 25 plus touches a week for this Saints team to win. Now, my concern again with Alvin is we haven't seen the explosive plays out of him. We've seen 3, 4, 5 yard runs, but normally we've seen him break some of those runs and have explosive plays. He hasn't had many explosive plays. And in my opinion, the Saints need to find a way to get him the ball in the passing game. Routes out of the backfield versus linebackers. Nobody can cover him. We haven't seen that part of his game introduced at all this year.
Well, you lead to my point here. His receiving yards are way down. He had 83 receptions last year. He's on pace right now for 42, Shanle. He has 21 less targets, 19 fewer catches through the first 4 games if you compare the first 4 games of last year. 21 less targets, 19 fewer catches, and 259 fewer receiving yards. I mean, that has to change.
It absolutely has to change. And especially when we get on here and we talk about our wide receiver core lacking explosiveness and talent, and we're all sitting here waiting for Michael Thomas to get back. We have the best receiving back in the league. Alvin Kamara out of the backfield, there's not a linebacker, and I don't care if you bring a safety in the box. Safeties have a hard time covering him. And just go back for fans trying to reference what I'm talking about. Go back to the Green Bay game. We're in the red zone early in the game. He runs that little out and angle route back underneath. The linebacker's not even close. That is what we need to see more out of this offense. Get Alvin Kamara the ball in the passing game.
All right, that's the offensive side of things. I think the defense was the problem for the Saints, especially late in the game. How surprised were you, given the fact that this defense has played so well this year and hasn't been at full strength, the way they played down the stretch and in overtime? What did you see there?
I was shocked. And we've leaned on this defense, really for more than this year. You could start with last year where the defense started to become the strength of the team. So you rely on those guys to do their job. And you should, because, for years we relied on Drew Brees and the offense to pull the defense out of ruts. So I think that was a disappointing part, was the defense folded when it mattered most. And you know what? It was the second most disappointing part that they folded when it mattered most. The most disappointing part was that they folded to Daniel Jones. I mean, the Giants certainly aren't a team that you're worried about coming into this game, and you aren't worried for Daniel Jones throwing for 400 yards with 2 wide receivers out of the game. That was the disappointing part, and hopefully a trend that doesn't start. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't get pressure on the passer, every passer in the NFL is good enough to throw for 400 yards in you. And so the defensive line really has to pick it up.
Shanle, you'll like this question. Can we kind of quiet the notion, this is the best defense of the Sean Payton era?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's not even – I would have said that going into this year.
You have said that.
Yeah, because I don't think they're the most talented defense we've had. I think from 2017 through 2020, somewhere in there, you can pick one of those defenses and the way they were playing, and I think they had more talent than they do right now. There's a lot of pressure on this defense. There's no doubt about it. You guys, we all got used to – as long as we hold them to 20 points or less, we're probably going to win a game. Those days are over for this year unless this offense really opens it up and becomes more aggressive.
All right, let's look at the Washington football team. They're 2-2, kind of under the radar. That division's taken a beating, and it should have over the past couple of years. But looking at the record, they lost to 2 legit teams. They lost to the Chargers. They lost at Buffalo. They beat the Giants, and they beat your favorite team, the Atlanta Falcons. So, this defense is full of first-rounders on the D-line. But what do you – Ron Rivera is a coach I have a lot of respect for. What do you see – what stands out about this Washington team for you?
Stand out would be a strong term. The thing that stands out the most is the fact that, yes, they beat the Falcons. I was thankful for that. But even when I watched them play the Falcons, there aren't many guys on this team that you can name. Taylor Heineke is a great story. Chase Young is a great story, big-time pick. He's been very disappointing this year. Their D-line is loaded with all first-round draft picks. But outside of that, Terry McLaurin, their wide receiver, is a very, very good wide receiver. There are a lot of no-name guys on this team, and it just depends what team shows up. When they play their best football, anybody can be beat. We saw that last week. I would have never thought the Giants would be able to beat the Saints. But they're coached by a really good coach. And when you have a really good coach coaching you and the guys are going to play hard for you, they believe in what you've installed, anybody can be beaten. And with this team, I don't think there's enough star power to beat this Saints defense as we know it. But again, you never know. We found out last week, anything can happen in the NFL. Absolutely.
All right, Justin, your favorite part of the show, you know what time it is. More likely, baby. We bring back Justin Thomas. Scott Shanle stays put, and I'm going to ask 3 hypothetical questions. I want to say the old nickname for Washington, but obviously we can't say that anymore. But I've been good, and I haven't said it in this podcast. But they're trying to pick a new nickname because they can't be the Washington football team forever. The finalists, of these, do you like one, or would you go off the board? The Washington Armada, the Washington Presidents, the Washington Brigade, the Washington Redhawks, the Washington Commanders, the Red Wolves. You got Armada, Presidents, Brigade, Redhawks, Commanders, Red Wolves. Any of those stick out, or do they just need to go back to the drawing board? More likely. What do you think?
Are those options that are really in contention?
Yes, those are the finalists. And apparently, Daniel Snyder has said they have picked 3 of those that are finalists, and they're going to pick from those 3 and reveal it soon, I believe. From what I've
read. I don't know. They're not bad. I've honestly gotten used to the Washington football team, and I think there was a time when they said that they were strongly considering just keeping that name. I like the Red Hawks of those that I can remember you spitting out. I don't know. It's just going to be hard for us to change how we used to think of them.
Absolutely.
Going forward. But I like the Red Hawks, I guess, the most out of those.
Yeah, they're one of the most, to me, they've had so much success in Washington over the years, and the tradition there, it's going to be strange not calling them by their former name. And now, we've kind of gotten used to the football team a little bit last couple of years. So, Shanle, what do you think? Armada, Presidents, Brigade, Red Hawks, Commanders, Red Wolves, or does Shanle have a new nickname?
No, I'm going to say you had the key word. You said because of the tradition. There is a lot of tradition with that football team. They've won Super Bowls. And that's why I think it's easier to go with either the Red Hawks or the Red Wolves. I just think it's closer enough
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
before, and it's not a completely whole new change. I think anything beyond that, you start getting into, are we going to keep the same color scheme? Right now, you could probably keep the same color scheme and just transition into that. My thing is, why are you waiting? Why would you wait 2 years to do this? You could have probably made that move last year before the season even started, slapped a hawk or a wolf on the side of your helmet and been done. So I don't know. There's a lot there, but there's a lot more bigger things going on with the Washington football team's program when you have people investigating from the feds and all sorts of things. I don't know what's going on up there. Maybe they won't even exist after this investigation.
Shanle kind of changed my opinion there. I never thought about the Red Hawks, Red Wolves. I kind of like the presidents a little bit, man. You could have fun with that. It's Washington. It's political. The Prez is this way. I mean, I think you could kind of have fun. When you think of Washington, of course, you think of the tradition and the word red and all that, and I see what they're doing there. But I think out of all those, I'm not really crazy about any of them. I would go presidents just because it's political and it kind of stands out for me. That's just me, though. All right, from one controversial subject to a little bit more controversial, Urban Meyer. I just can only imagine how Urban Meyer felt Sunday morning. I don't know the first person to reach Urban Meyer, whether it was his wife, whether it was a buddy. And if you're listening to our podcast, if you don't know the story, Jacksonville Jaguars coach Urban Meyer did not fly back with his team after the Thursday game at Cincinnati. He stayed in Ohio where he used to live and coach, and he has a bar there. And he was caught virally with a very young woman, with the lack of a better term, his hands were all over her, and it wasn't flattering. He apologized, and then another video came out, which made it look like he wasn't giving everybody the full story. So I'm asking you guys, and here's my thing with Urban Meyer. There's a lot of people in the media like this, and in life, frankly, that they want to pile on a guy like this when he's down. I don't really want to touch, from my perspective, he's got to answer to his wife. He's got to answer to people. I'm looking at this from a football perspective, okay? Is this a slightly big deal? Is it a big deal? Or is it a huge deal? Slightly big deal, or huge deal? If you're on the Jaguars, if you're in the front office, or if you're on the football team, if you're in that building, is it a big deal? More likely, Justin.
I think it's a big deal. I mean, that's the kind of thing you would expect like a rookie player to do or someone pretty young. The fact that it's the head coach, someone who represents the organization doing that, who's married, who's already a pretty big figure from his college days. I was shocked. I didn't even know a second video came out, so I'm going to have to go watch that. I can't believe first-time head coach would allow himself to be in that position where people can film. And then, I mean, there's reports that he's slowly losing the team. They're already struggling to win. I think it's a pretty big deal. I don't know how they fix it, but he's definitely going to have to. I think it's going to be hard for him to get the team back after something like this.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to see the second video. I'd like to have those. Somebody gave it to, showed it to. That's just bad. It's just not. It's not a good look. Shanle is a former player. Take me inside the locker room from your perspective. If your coach was Urban Meyer and you were on that team and you went through training camp and you've been with this guy, and the Jaguars are showing improvement. I mean, they should have won that game against Cincinnati. But how big a deal is this?
It's a big deal. I put myself in that Jaguars locker room. It's a big deal because you already as a player, and I was telling this to somebody the other day about, as an NFL player, when college coaches come in, you automatically look at them out the side of your eye like, are you good enough to coach, quote unquote, big boy football? Are you ready for this level? At Ohio State, you had the best players. Congratulations. You won 10 out of 11 games because you were just more talented. So you're already making a guy prove it to you that you can do it professionally, X's and O's wise, and he hasn't done that so far. I give it to him. He's not the most talented roster. But then do you know how many times Urban Meyer has been on TV last year when he was an analyst or at Ohio State, and he would talk about, here are the key ingredients you need to a successful team and locker room. You need selflessness. You need all these other things. And I'm sure he spit the same thing to his players all training camp, all 4 weeks of the regular season. And then lo and behold, this shows up. You're too good to fly back with us on the plane.
Right.
You're at a bar, you're doing things that if I was a player, maybe if I wasn't a starter, I would get released. And so right now, you talk about resenting a guy. I already said they already resented him because he was a college guy. I think he's going to have a hard time getting that player's trust back unless they win games. And I don't see them winning many games this year.
Yeah, somebody sent me this. It was a full screen graphic of Urban Meyer on Fox Sports, his criteria to examine for struggling teams. According to Urban Meyer, these were the three components: trust issues, dysfunctional environment, and selfishness. That's
well, he
pretty
just
damning.
he just did all three in one.
Yeah, all the above. Shanle,
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
Right.
Shanle, you know what? The video is one thing, okay? But what really bothered me, how do you're just crushed, you're banging your fist on the podium, your frustration after the Cincinnati game, and you don't fly home with your football team? And that's a young football team. I think that to me bothered me the most.
Yeah, the fact that you're staying back. I told you guys, we always have our little former players Saints chat. We're talking, and that was the main thing everybody brought up. Like, can you ever remember a time where the head coach of a team you played on didn't fly back with the team? And I can't remember one single time. We always saw the coach getting on because everybody knew when the head coach was on the plane.
Right.
You kind of sat up a little straighter. You made sure everything was a little more tidy around you. Like, that happened all the time. So for him to think that it's a selfish thing, it's a maybe I'm better than you guys, so I don't have to do what we're supposed to be doing. He's not all in. I don't know. I don't know what. Personally, I don't know the real Urban Meyer. I've heard stories about Urban Meyer, and some people say that video doesn't surprise them at all. There's other people that say that video shocked them. So I think because I don't know who the real Urban Meyer is, I don't know how to judge him or how critical to be of him.
Well, I covered him in Florida, his whole career there, and I liked him personally. I was kind of an outlier. I liked him because he was honest, and I thought he brought in a lot of different personalities. One day, ESPN's going to do a 30 for 30 on all the personalities they had, from Aaron Hernandez to Tim Tebow and every personality in between. I mean, that was a very melting pot of personalities in that Florida Gator roster. The guy can get it done from a recruiting perspective and as a coach, but you hear all kinds of stories. You wonder how much is true. He's an enigma. There's no doubt about it. All right, last more likely, and I think it's a huge deal with Urban Meyer, by the way. What's more upsetting to you of what happened in the Dome coming? The Saints collapse in overtime, or the fact they misspelled Morton Anderson in the Ring of Honor in the Superdome? It was Morton, not Ten. What's more upsetting to you, Justin Thomas?
I mean, I think you have to go with misspelling Morton Anderson's name.
It's terrible.
No matter how good or
That's terrible. It's terrible.
Oh, it is. And no matter how good or bad a team is, like the Saints, they had a bad matchup. That happens every once in a while. The fact that they misspelled one of the greatest kickers, not only for Saints, but in NFL history, misspelled his name, to me is just appalling. I don't know how that wasn't caught at some point down the line before it was put on the board. I just can't believe that. I feel bad for Morton. I think it's easier to overlook a team loss than it is to misspelling one of the greatest players ever. So
yeah, I just was shocked, and I'm I feel like I'm a decent speller, and Morton Anderson has his name is not spelled because he's not from this country. But when I saw that, I'm thinking, why would they leave that up there? Or when are they going to take it down? I mean, I'm kind of having fun with this, but I'm kind of not, Shanle. I mean, how surprised were you? I don't know if you heard about that, but it was kind of weird to me to see that.
I was shocked, and I was very disappointed in the Saints organization. I've always said they're a first-class organization. It doesn't change my opinion. People are allowed to make mistakes, but when you go and you purchase the lettering to put up there and the lights to light up the lettering and all these things, and nobody double checks to make sure every single letter is not only straight but is accurate.
Yeah.
I could not believe it. I'm mad when I saw it. I'm still mad about it for Morton. I mean, not many players get their name up in that dome, and for them not to double check, triple check, quadruple check to make sure it was right, I was extremely disappointed. And there haven't been many times I've been disappointed in the people that in the organization, great people, but you can't let that happen.
All right, they have a month till their next home game. Please tell me, when they play the Bucs on Halloween, that'll be fixed, Shanle. It's got to be fixed, right?
I'm sure it'll be fixed. Yeah, I know it got circulated on social media right away as people went into the dome. and they looked up there and they were putting it on. And I know the Saints were getting crushed. I believe they ended up dimming the lights behind his first name or maybe his entire name. So they're going to, if I know Coach Payton, they had somebody in there after the game taking the lettering down. So I'm sure they're going to get it fixed, but it was just embarrassing for them.
All right, speaking of embarrassing, let's get the predictions here. I am 0-4. 0-4. Shanle and Justin, you were both 1-3. Saints on the road against the Washington football team. Who wins? What's the score?
At this point, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's like this team doesn't have an identity for some reason. We hinted at it earlier. They seem to be schizophrenic. When we think they're going to lose, they win. We don't know what team's going to show up. You know what? At this point, I don't have any faith in the team like I did earlier in the year. I know that this is Washington. I know it's Taylor Heineke. Until I can see something otherwise, I'll take the bullet this week. I'm going to pick the Saints to lose.
Oh.
I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I think I'm going to say Washington gets 24, Saints get 17. I hate to do it, but I don't know what to get. Every week I think, oh, this is the time.
The trust is gone. The
trust is gone. So I'm going to say
win. Saints officially have won. All right, Shanle. What do you think? You kind of let the cat out of the bag earlier, but let's come back to it.
I know. I feel Justin's pain. I do. I mean, we're sitting here 2-2 and complaining, and Jaguars fans would love to be 2-2. So I guess you got to look at
Jaguars
it as the glass is half full.
Shanle.
That's true. If it was a different team with different, like I said, they have a bunch of guys that I can't even really name until I look at a depth chart. I think the Saints are clearly the more talented team. I think Ron Rivera is a heck of a coach. But I think that this week it's just I can't pick the Washington football team to beat the Saints because I think the Saints are a better team from top to bottom. But what I am going to do is my faith in this offense after seeing them last week is completely shot. So I'm going to go Saints 10, Washington football team 7.
Oh no! Oh my gosh! You were 40-10 last week.
Yeah, seriously.
I know. What it did. I finally got my eyes open last week thinking, we're coming home to the dome. The energy's going to be in there like the old days. We're going to be throwing bombs over the back of the secondary. Then after the game, I thought, this isn't your Drew Brees Saints. And so I realized until I see this offense score 30-some points and light it up a little bit more, I'm going to pick in the teens for the rest of the year for them to score.
Okay, man, I'm going to go contrarian again. I'm going to pick Saints, but Justin already picked Washington, which means the Saints will definitely win this week because that's the kind of power we have on this franchise. Bring back the Meacham magic, man. It's time. Meacham magic. Washington, man. Bring it back. 27-24, and the brand new field goal kicker with the game winner. That's what's going to go down. That's what's going to go down this week. All right, well, listen, that is our podcast. Where are we at on Twitter, Justin?
At Dundat Podcast.
Check us out on all of the platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, wherever there's a podcast. Please give us feedback, subscribe. We appreciate your support. And we'll see what happens with these unpredictable Saints. I thought they'd be 2-2, but I certainly didn't think 2-2 would look like this. And we'll talk to you next week. For Scott Shanle, for Justin Thomas, I'm merely Mike Nabors. Enjoy the football.